Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Table 21. My guest today is Kyle Inserra. Now, Kyle is the host of another podcast called the National Restaurant Owners Podcast. He works also with Sabre Advisors, helping clients find restaurant locations on a real estate side. So we'll get to ask him about that. But he's also an industry veteran. He's been in the industry, I think, close to 20 years, and he'll confirm that. Worked in the kitchen, owned his own restaurant. I think restaurant's still running called Paul Pettina in Westchester, New York. So let's bring him in right now. How are you, Kyle?
How's it going?
Very good. Thanks for having on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm very happy to have you with us today. We're getting to talk with more and more people from all over. And I find a lot of times, even I've been doing, podcasts for a while. I used to get into the meat and right away, but sometimes it's fun to have a little bit of context into people. I've seen some of your content on LinkedIn, listen to, some of the podcasts you've done, but don't really know Kyle that much. I know you've been in the industry. So I'd like to start with a little exercise I call this or that.
All right.
If you allow me, I'll throw a couple of things your way and you tell me if it's this or that for you. So
I'm ready. I feel like I'm on a game show. This is great.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, right? It's kind of fun to get to know a little bit more about people. So we text a lot these days. So are you more about words or emojis?
Words.
Some people put so many of these emojis in there, right?
And it's supposed to tell a story. No, I can't keep up with it.
It's hard to get the context sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So are you more dining room or takeout?
Dining room.
Yeah. I miss dining room so much.
Now I am. That's exactly right. It's like what you don't have, you miss.
Yeah. Are you more jogging or gym?
Gym.
Yeah.
I think my jogging days have been cut back these last couple of years.
Yeah, I love. I had somebody on this week that was clearly a jogger who runs, I think, 3 times 10K a week. I just like to lift heavy things and throw them.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Are you? You worked as a chef, right?
Yes.
Are you more beets or Brussels sprouts?
It's funny. I'm kind of over Brussels sprouts, and I just was reading up on beets, and I said to myself, I got to get more beets around here. So I would say I'm more beets for sure.
You need to enter some beets in your life.
I need some more beets.
Nice. Are you more chips or ice cream?
Ice cream.
Netflix or YouTube?
Netflix. But if you go, I don't. I said to my wife the other day, I'm like, I think we're missing out on things that are on YouTube. I don't go down that rabbit hole enough. I don't want to go down UFO aliens, but there's some cool that you can get really sucked in. But
there's some rabbit holes in everything, even in our industry. Like you can get lost for a long, long time in there.
Yeah.
Are you more beach or mountain?
Beach. 100% beach.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Too
much coffee. Yeah.
We don't know each other, but I think we'll be friends, you and I.
We will be
a lot of similar answers there. Very cool. Thanks for playing my little game there.
Yeah.
So you've been in the industry close to 20 years, I believe. What brings little Kyle into the restaurant industry all those years ago?
So I started. My first job ever was a bunch of buddies of mine were. I don't know what grade I was in. And in 7th grade, I think I was. And they had money. I'm like, where the hell are you guys getting money? I was begging my parents for $5 and wasn't even getting that back then. So they were like, oh, we work as a busboy at this restaurant. And it was this huge, brewery, way ahead of time, microbrewery restaurant, had reggae bands on the rooftop on Fridays. It was on Long Island. And they got me a job, but they didn't need a busboy. They needed a glass boy. So, like I said, they had big liters, and it was double stacked dishwashers. I had machines, but you had to clean it, make sure they were dry, and send them out. So, I got sucked in from there. Then they promoted me busboy, and the chef grabbed me one day, and then I was hooked.
Very cool. And you eventually went into the kitchen, I believe, right? You became a chef at some point.
Yeah, I actually went to college, 4-year college. And thought I was doing the right thing. And I worked for advertising. I worked for a major advertising company, and it just wasn't me. I knew that it wasn't me. And then I left there and worked on Wall Street for a little while. And that was even more not me. And I quit one day after 9/11 and just said, I don't want to do any of this anymore. I don't want to do anything like this. And I went downstairs. I called my dad, told him that I quit my job. And he basically, I don't know, passed out, cursed. I don't know what he did, but wasn't happy. And I enrolled in the French Culinary Institute like right after that. So that was probably 2002. So yeah, then since then it's been in the industry all in.
Very cool. And you eventually had your, I guess, started or bought your own restaurant. Was it Pulpetina in Westchester, right? New York?
Yeah. So I mean, I had originally started working in kitchens all around the city, Manhattan. I was in New Jersey and eventually down the U.S. Virgin Islands for a while. And I came back to open up a restaurant called Pulpetina. I'm no longer involved with them anymore. We sold it about, I guess, about 4 years ago now. And yeah, it was great. It was great. It was really a whole learning experience. And then really what I base all my like content type stuff off of. And the reason why I host the podcast, because I feel like there's so much knowledge in learning the hard way.
Yeah.
And I don't want anybody to have to go through what I went through. So I try to share those little stories every once in a while. But yeah, that was the first restaurant that I had.
Very cool. And I mean, obviously we go through so many, I don't know how long were you in your restaurant?
So we had Pulpetina. It was about 7 or 8 years.
Okay.
I was there. Yeah.
So you've seen a lot of stuff happen. I mean, from your past experience, but running your own restaurant, some of the funniest or weirdest thing that happened to you during a service? I've been in the industry for, I guess, 25, 30 years. And I've got, we all have all of these fun things happen, but any funny or weird story about stuff that's happened to you during a service?
Oh man. I was back of the house. So, I mean, there's always a story that goes on back there, for sure. I mean, everything from, my first chef ever, the guy at the, so this was kind of my introduction to the business. He was, I actually just reconnected with him on LinkedIn. It was really funny.
Yeah.
He was a big barrel chested dude who had gauged earrings before they were like the thing. Whoops. They were like huge. He had a shaved head, but had like rings around here, like kind of spiky here. Big, long Captain Lou Albano beard with the rubber bands. And he drove a Duster with a chain link steering wheel. And I remember going in. Somebody told me
this is not the 80s. This is the 2000s, right?
No, well, this was probably 1990. This is probably, let's say, 1993, 94.
Okay, it makes sense. I mean, he's a little late on the 80s, but I mean, I'm picturing this in 85, but it makes sense.
He was doing his best to keep it alive for sure. And somebody asked me to go, like it was like a joke. Like one of the line cooks asked me to go into the walk-in for a second. I went in there and he was like smoking this huge joint, just like in the middle of service, like in the walk-in. And I was like, all right, that's it. I guess this is the. And then he continued to smoke it all around the kitchen. And I was like, is anybody gonna say anything?
Yeah.
And no, nobody said a damn thing. Yeah.
This is normal here.
Yeah, exactly. So I was young at that time. I thought it was cool. I was like, wow, this guy's so cool. But the stuff that goes on the ownership side is just some of the things that, it's just crazy. The things you see in this industry. They're one of a kind. Everybody's got these stories. And that's probably like something I got to really think about because there's been so many.
There's so much going on. And you mean, are you trying to tell me there's drugs in the restaurant industry? Is that what you're?
I mean, I didn't want the cat's out of the bag now. We can't do anything about it.
Yeah. I wasn't going to go there at all because I want to talk about some of the stuff you do now, but I'm curious to hear you on if you have an opinion on this. But there's been a big, I felt it here. I'm based in Montreal, Canada, and I felt it here because one of the local, very famous chef went through kind of a healthy transition. Mm-hmm. And there seems to be a big movement. Like obviously I, grew up, spent my whole life in this industry, abusing shots and a lot of people, drugs and schedules and stuff like that. There seems to be a desire to make careers in hospitality maybe more sustainable. Because I don't know for you, but I did it like on my feet for 20 years. And there's a reason why I don't do it anymore. It's not because I don't love it. It's because eventually your body can't keep up and people want to settle down and have families and stuff like that. So there seems to be a big movement from people to get conscious that maybe we are not always healthy. And they might be healthier habits, right? It's cool that you can do those 5 shots of Jameson at the end of the shift, but are they really necessary? And the drug related,
Yeah.
Have you seen that as well? Like, is that something you work with a lot of restaurants?
Yeah. And there's a guy, his name's escaping me now, out of the South, who he himself's a sober chef, and he's kind of like driving that bus. And yeah, it's a fast track to burnout, right? Like, I know the industry definitely, I think right when I got into culinary school, it was right when Kitchen Confidential came out, and it was kind of like cool to be a chef, and all that stuff was brought to light. And I think had like its second comeuppance again, because I think people felt like they had to live up to that expectation of, well, this is what we do. We smoke weed, we smoke cigarettes, we get drunk after work, and we hang out until 3 a.m, and we do it all again the next day. Yeah. Now, there's no chance I can even imagine. I can't, you know what I mean? Like, I can barely get up in the morning as it is, let alone if I had to do all that. But yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the positive things that's coming out of this industry is that it's a real professional thing. It's no longer like a pit stop on your way to something else. People making careers, making good money, launching them onto other things based on their success in the restaurants. So yeah, I mean, I love to see it, and I know it's something that plagues the industry for sure. But I'm glad that it's front and center now. That's a great thing.
Very cool. Yeah, I really feel it too. I don't know if you've ever heard of Joe Beef. You're on the East Coast, right?
Oh, dude.
Do you have Joe Beef's book?
David and Fred? Pete de Cochon over here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Martin Picard, good buddies with all these guys.
So I got to tell you a funny story then. So my buddy, he was just on the podcast. He's super gregarious, outgoing. He used to play for the Alouettes.
Nice.
And he told some stories on that podcast about his experience. He didn't know anything. He didn't know how he was going to get in Joe Beef, and his stories are insane. I'm dying to go there.
I said, where can we hear that? I'm curious now.
I gotta put him. I have him here. This is my list. He's gonna be on in June, the first week of June.
Okay, he's coming on your podcast.
Yeah, I recorded already, but he's gonna be. Yeah,
I want to hear some of these stories. That's amazing.
But yeah, they were like a tremendous team back then. I think they won something like 3 out of 5 Grey Cups back then. So yeah,
that's the years where I was actually working downtown in some restaurants, and I think the D line, the coaches and a big part of the D line used to come at our bar.
He was on the D line. He was on the D line.
He was on the D line.
Yeah,
who is it? Can you tell us?
Eric Wilson.
Okay. Yeah, I actually met Devon Claybrooks. Also played for them back then. Yep. He had a Super Bowl ring. I actually wore a Super Bowl ring, which was about the size of my hands, and I had some decent sized hands, but it was hiding my whole hand. I don't know if he's still there, but Devon was the head coach at the Lions in BC. I think it was of last year, but we was around these guys quite a bit, and we used to go to games all the time, and around those years where they kept winning. So I haven't been in a while because they haven't been doing really well for a couple of years, but there was some exciting stuff there.
Yeah, he played in the NFL for a while. He played actually played with Tom Brady at the University of Michigan. So yeah, and he's a super funny guy. But now he works in the restaurant industry. He works in liquor sales, but he's got a story after story after story from his days up there. It's incredible.
What's his name?
Eric Wilson.
So let's look for Eric Wilson on, I guess, the National Restaurant Owners Podcast.
Yeah.
For early in June.
Episode number 69, which was not intentional.
with a funny guy like that, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. I'm curious, after all that experience you've had, all that stuff you've done, we learned a lot. What is, younger Kyle from the 2000s, or even before that when you worked in the industry, but you went back like in 2002. What would you, if you could sit down with Kyle from 2002, what would you tell him?
2002, so I was getting out of culinary school. I probably would say, to do exactly what we were talking about, like party less. If this is really what you want to do, then you gotta, there's a real opportunity to rise above everybody by, committing to the craft, that kind of thing. I went, I was older, so I had graduated college. So I was, 22 at the time, 23, and it was like I needed to make money. Like I had a mortgage. I wasn't a kid like living at his mom's house, so I had to go and work at places that were not so. I could have gone to work for. I have a great story about almost working for Tom Colicchio, but for that level, but I had to stay at a different level so I can make more money because I had bills to pay. I would have sacrificed. The money, whatever the difference was. It was probably like $100 a week. I don't know what it was, and like to just get the experience. To work on somebody. I don't care what industry, and I think that's the name of the game. Yeah,
when you're young, right? You delayed gratification is not something that's popular, but no. And you worked under Tom who?
No, I didn't work on. So Tom Colicchio, like Top Chef, the host of Top Chef.
Yeah,
I was like one of those things, when you're working in a kitchen and you're working, but you want to work somewhere else and they want you in for a trail, but you're like working every day. So you don't want to go on your day off. So you're like, I got a dentist appointment, I got to go do something. So I had just trailed at another place in the city, which was not my favorite. So I'm like, okay, I don't want to work there. I went back to work. And then, so I'm calling, every day in the morning before I go to work, I'm calling. And I get a call one day and it's like, hey, this is Kyle. Yeah, sure. Hey, we want you to come in for a trail. It's Tom Colicchio from Kraft. And I'm like, wow, okay. I mean, he wasn't who he was then. He was known, but it wasn't like, and I said, well, I actually just had a trail. It's going to be difficult for me to go here. And he was like, can I curse on the show?
Yeah, sure.
He goes, do you want the fucking job or not? And I was like, no, I don't. And not if it's going to be like this. So.
Nice. So you did not wind up working with him?
No, did not.
Yeah. Let's talk about what you do now. You work with Sabre Advisors. What do they do, and what's your role with them?
So Sabre is a boutique national commercial real estate advisory company. So unlike residential real estate, and this is maybe an important point, I never actually really thought about this, but in residential real estate, there's one type of real estate agent. You transact on houses, right?
Yeah.
Commercial real estate, there's a lot of different niches, like a lot of different ones. So I happen to focus in the emerging restaurant category. There's not a lot of us who do that. Most commercial real estate brokers maybe pick 2 or 3 different niches to kind of focus on. Yeah. So I actually focus strictly on the emerging restaurant brands. And what we do is if you have, 2, 3 concepts, or maybe you want to be more aggressive and you have one concept, we help you identify your target audience and then help you find that audience in other locations around the country.
Very cool. And you made a good point. Just to clarify, it makes it pretty clear. You're helping brands that obviously want to expand and find the best spots and all that. What would be a few of the other branches? I'm guessing retail, obviously. But would you consider retail for clothing to be one, or what are a couple of the branches that people may encounter?
Yeah, the retail is. You mean with the commercial real estate advisors? Yeah, it's typically, retail is lumped into a lot of different categories. So it could be like a Walgreens, a Rite Aid, a CVS kind of thing, or it could be a Gap, Banana Republic type of thing, or cannabis stores are technically retail. But there's retail. There's investment sales, meaning people who, sell the whole building to different corporations. People work industrial. People work in multifamily, which is not like 3 or 4 family, but like 50 apartment units, 100 apartment units, big projects. And there's very little crossover from one to the other. So I happen to focus on what's called tenant rep. So I actually work for the restaurant owner. So it's completely free. The restaurant owner doesn't pay anything for it. All our fees are paid for on the landlord side.
Yeah.
And we just, that's why you'll see guys like me pick their niche and stay in it. So somebody might do fitness. Somebody might do, apparel because they used to be in that business. Yeah. Because now you can add more value other than just showing a site.
Very nice. So you it's really interesting that, again, kind of like when you go with a mortgage broker, the mortgage broker makes his money on bringing business to the bank. In your case, you're bringing business to the landlord. Yeah. So the restaurants. So if you're a brand that what Kyle mentioned as an emerging brand, but you're a brand that's growing, and we got a couple of brands. Know that there are services out there that can help you, that have experience that's what they do every day. So there's a lot of details that you may not be aware of that they are. So because of your experience in that, are they and you work with the restaurants for the restaurants really to help them. Any tips or any things that somebody we work? Obviously, our show, our audience with Piecemeal is restaurants, all kinds of restaurants, independents, a lot of chains, a lot of restaurant groups. But you service emerging brands. But if we have people that may not be at the level where they can go work with you, any tips that we could bring from your experience and what you've seen in maybe 2, 3 tips that help them when they want to search for maybe a new location or that first location if somebody's about to open, or if they want to expand their brand and they want to start maybe look at site number 2 and they're not quite ready to work with a Sabre. And I'm sure there's a few quick tips you could give them to make their life simpler.
Yeah, I mean, number one is, I mean, just on the operations side, before you even head out, do like have your stuff in order, like your finances in order, understand what you can afford. This game of like, oh, well, we're 1,800 square feet here, but if we were 3,000 square feet, we could do so much more business. Very rarely is the case.
Yeah.
And, so just base your rent number that you're looking to be in off your current sales. Don't base it off of what you think you can do, because that's just, now you're just working. Now you're basically working for the landlord if you can't keep up. And then you want to find somebody that you can really, the signs that you see are what's available and on the market. The best deals in the
Not advertised.
Not advertised.
Yes.
And the only way to get them is through broker relationships, really. So we call the landlord or the landlord's representative, and they may be holding on to tenants that have a great location, but because they can't say, hey, we want to kick this guy out of here, he's not paying his rent, they can say things like, hey, we can make this space available. Who's your client? Let's see their financials, because they want to get somebody better in there, right? So find somebody. And if you don't know how to find somebody, ask somebody. And if you don't want to ask anybody, look for the brokerage in your area that has the most signs. At least shows that they have some market knowledge, and has to be put in touch with the person who handles restaurants and retail.
Very cool. So going out there and that's a really good tip, is that, and I guess that's kind of like when people invest in even residential real estate, the best deals are not the ones you find on a website, right? They're usually hidden, and they're kind of part of that circle. So talking to people and building rapport, like in anything in life, right? Building relationships, talking, is a great way to find it. I love how you're saying, do your homework. Having doubling your square footage is not going to double your sales, right? No. And it's going to double the amount of staff that you need, though, right? And raise your labor cost, and you may need higher food costs because you need to buy more stuff and more in marketing. So all that spending is going to go up to bringing the kind of volume you need to do that 3,000 square foot. And your concept, if it worked in 1,500, may not work in double the size, right? So
yeah, I mean, I really think that that's something that's kind of maybe a pre-COVID situation. Like, I think the smart operators have had this time to say, do I need all this space? Or maybe they said, you know what, I don't need so much indoor space. I'm actually going to take advantage of this space and make it outdoor, whatever it is. Just really don't do it with emotion. Do it with the logical mind. I mean, most restaurants have been through hell and back the last year. Hopefully took some time to think about that. So, I mean, it's a matter of really a short-term emotional gain. Like, oh, I really wanted that 3,000 square feet. Yeah. But now you're locked into this rent for the next 10 plus years. And that looming rent when you're not making the money is so much stress. Yeah. It's not worth it.
Again, like in anything, like when it's time to cost a menu, like when it's time to anything you want to do with opening the business, same thing with the real estate side, is that you have a plan, have your information ready, know what you need to do, and have your limits. That's a really good point. I've seen it so many times that people do their projections based on the best case scenario. Yeah. And as we all know, life is not always a best case scenario, right? You don't have to be completely pessimistic, but you need to be realistic. And like you said, especially if you have a history with your with a first location, or even with restaurants around where you are, you have information. So have a game plan and make sure that you make decisions based on those. So thank you for those tips. It's very valuable. How do you see? Obviously, as you said, also, a lot of stuff has gone to delivery, and it's funny to me how people think that everything's going to stay delivery. I'm like, no, when this reopens, people want to go into dining rooms. Yeah. You're still going to have sales on the delivery or the takeout side, but I think it's going to come back to balance itself. How are you guys seeing this? And I guess New York, or you're in New York, right? Yep. Or New York State. Yep. US is more advanced on vaccination. A lot of stuff is reopening with you guys. We're probably like late June. It seems you guys are going to be a few weeks ahead. What are you seeing as far as even people looking for locations, but how are they approaching, or how is your circle approaching that, going back to a balance between indoor dining, delivery, takeout, all that? Are you even seeing concepts where they're adapting some takeout counters? I've seen more and more of that, but what are you seeing in that world?
There's more consideration both front of the house and back of the house for what it takes to execute this. It's no longer just an afterthought. you're not slapping the food in a metal tin with a plastic lid and throwing it out. You actually took the time. You care about your packaging. You care about how it looks and your branding. You've dedicated a front of house pickup. I'm sure a lot of people have seen the, A through D last name over here, or, Uber Eats, Grubhub here, grab the last name. And then the back of the house consideration. I mean, anybody who's worked in a restaurant knows that you're in that flow and you're plating, and then you have it to go. You're like, oh God, what, can you hand me a to go container? Like, bring that over here. This is to go, pack it up, depending on the concept, right? And then on the expo side, there's so many different considerations. Sometimes the expo line is this big. Well, now where are all the bags, the containers? Where's all that going to go? So I see a lot more consideration to that. And I even see, some concepts that, weren't necessarily so. The food maybe was considered takeout, but they didn't do a lot of takeout.
Yeah.
And now they're putting things in like a walk-up window. Come here, just grab your burger and then head out. Like, you don't even have to come in here. Just, order online. Here's your name. Grab it. What's your name? Kyle. Boom. Take it. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. And a lot of the conversation initially was, restaurants are going to want less space. But what's happening is some of the busier takeout places are actually putting 2 lines in. Like Chipotle has 2 lines. Chipotle does front of the house, back of the house. On a back of the house, that's just doing straight takeout, which is,
So it doesn't slow down their lane where the customers are in the restaurant, right?
Yeah. I mean, Chipotle is a bad example because I don't really consider them a restaurant. They're just a place to eat. But like restaurants are actually, taking that in consideration.
Yeah. Or everybody's going to have to adapt, obviously, to a new, and I hate those words, a new reality or the new, but I mean, there is definitely going to be some changes. It's just funny to me when you see with ghost kitchens and stuff like that, a lot of people seem to think that, there's so many of them opening right now. I'm like, there's going to go back to a balance when things reopen. Like, these guys are not executing properly. The food is not there. The profitability is not necessarily there. So it's funny that it's the gold rush to the ghost kitchen, but it's not necessarily.
No, I don't think it's a gold rush at all. And I think what I said this the other day, I don't think that people are not missing restaurants because they're like, oh, I'm starving. I can't wait till these restaurants reopen. Like, we know how to cook at home. However, we feed ourselves. We can sustain ourselves, right? Yeah. And we can pull up to a Chick-fil-A. Got it. Figure you missed the connection. You missed the ambiance. You missed the experience. That's what it's all about. So
I surely do, anyways. And everybody I talk to, even though I'm surrounded by a lot of people from our industry, are feeling the same way. I feel when this reopens, it's going to get pretty crazy with how much people want to go out and like you said, get that experience, that vibe.
Are you guys not open at all, or what's the status there?
In Quebec right now, every region or area, which would be like a county in the States, has a color level. So like a green, yellow, red.
Right.
Most of the province is in red, which means restaurants are closed except for takeout or delivery. And a few areas that are a little less populated. I mean, Quebec is a very big territory. Mm-hmm. A few of the areas are yellow where, I mean, there might be 3 areas that are the less populated in Quebec that are actually open for business. Yeah. But most, I'd say probably 60 to 80% of restaurants in Quebec are only open if they want on a delivery or takeout. Wow. It's been pretty insane. There's even no, I can't even find the English word for it. Excuse my French here in Quebec, but basically, you'll help me with the word, but you can't go out from 9:30 to 6 in the morning.
Curfew.
Thank you, curfew. I know that word. I've heard it before. But there's a curfew that's been on since February here, and in the heaviest regions, it's 8 o'clock, and then most regions is about 9:30. There seems to be talk right now that the mayor of Montreal asked yesterday, said if the health and health officials accept, they would like to reopen the patios in Montreal on June 1st. But the government right now, the rollout is a little slower than you guys, but we should be, I'm hoping by the end of June, they're hoping to have the first vaccine given to everybody. So I'm hoping by the end of June, we'll see some maybe, lower capacity, but some indoor dining as well. But the patio is going to help. Everybody's in Montreal in the summer. I mean, I saw you on another interview where you were talking about you've never had that much snow as you've had this winter from a few months ago. Like it was winter's pretty heavy in Montreal. So in the summer, everybody wants to be on patios. Like even if it's freezing, people have their coats and the heaters and we'll stay out until October if we can. So
that's what happened in New York. Like you couldn't get people to sit outside if it wasn't like a perfect day. Like, nah, we don't want to sit outside. We want to sit inside, and then it's a summer. It's too hot. You don't want to sit in. You don't want to sit on the curb. New York City gets kind of hot in the summer.
Yeah.
And it's
it smells. It can get intense depending where you're at in New York, right?
Traffic, yeah. So like now you had restaurants fully built on the street that had heaters. I mean, a lot of it didn't make sense to me, but people toughed it out and the owners put the money in. It's really, really incredible. I think that's going to be the story moving forward.
Yeah, that was something really hard here last summer. They reopened in June and lower capacity, 25, 30, 50%. Asked everybody to put all these dividers everywhere. And then in October, they re-shut everything down. So pretty much everything's been shut down this way since October, which was going to be a month to break it. And then October went into Christmas, went into January, and we're still closed. Wow. So, but people were pretty pissed off because they invested money in these dividers and all these, this protection equipment, and they had to get re-shut down after 2-3 months of operation. So it hasn't been easy. No. You've been in our industry for a long time, in obviously wearing different hats, owner, chef. Now on the real estate side, on the advisory side, who are 3 people in your career that have had the most influence on you?
The first one was actually a Canadian guy. He was a chef at a restaurant that I worked at in Jersey City, New Jersey, and I forget who he worked. He went to some very, very prestigious like Toronto culinary something up there.
Yeah.
And he came to the States, worked his way around the city, and he just taught me, ordering systems and organizing things the proper way, cleanliness, the way you treat staff. And he had this unique system. What was unique to me at the time where he didn't hire a saute guy. He didn't hire a grill guy. He hired a cook, and everybody rotated, including him. So he would be expo one night. He would be on salads one night. We all would do it. Now, Friday, Saturday night, he would be up there expoing because that was his deal. But during the week, so everybody got time off, closed on Monday. Everybody got 2 days off a week, and you rotated through those stations. This way, if somebody was out, you could pop somebody back in. So I thought that was great.
That's very smart.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it makes sense now, but at the time it was like, I don't do fish station. I only do grill. No, that doesn't work here. So that was really cool. Let's see, other people. There's a gentleman who is an attorney who's highly connected to the hospitality space, does a lot of like deal making stuff for big name chefs. And I was fortunate enough to meet him and become friends with him, and his insight and level of, his name's Andy Pesco, big time attorney, completely unassuming. And he just has ways of reading your situation or listening to you talk and giving you like just that one sentence that you need to like make you see it and like make you realize what's going on. And I think it's, I consider him a real true mentor. But that type of outside experience, sometimes when you're so head down in it, you need to like somebody to pull you back, and say, hey, look at this. And, did you ever think about that? He's one. And then who's another one? Another influential person. I have to say, really, in a weird way, my wife, because she really was the one who was like, look, if you don't want to do this, you shouldn't be. I got to that point where I was like, I can't be here all the time. I can't do this all the time. It's just not. I could feel the passion just drained out of me. Like, I love the industry, but I love it at a different level now. Yeah. I could not be in it anymore. And I was miserable. And she just really kind of made me the same kind of thing. Because when you're an owner, you're so caught up in the payroll, the sales, the taxes, the cost of goods. And you need to find that. She taught me, like, today's a nice day. Go in later, go for a walk, clear your head, do that kind of stuff. And I was so like, go there, and be there. I had to be there. I couldn't, if something was out of place, it was going to be on me. That when I finally did come out of it and we went out to like a Target or something on a Saturday, I was like, who the hell are all these people? Like, where now I'm used to going to Target or doing my stuff on like a Monday, right?
Tuesday morning or
Yeah, exactly.
There's nobody there.
So learning to listen to people outside. A lot of times you get caught up in, it's my restaurant, I need to know everything, I need to do everything, but like, you got to listen, man. And that was something that I learned the hard way. So,
well, very happy that Thanks for sharing about those three. And that
Yeah.
your wife, our significant others have they know us really well, and they have a really good way of having it. And then you said it even with about talking about Andy Pesco before, but it's the ability to help us have a global view, like a larger view, right? Sometimes our nose is so stuck in our business. It's very hard to get a view of our business, right? Like I've always told my consulting clients, you either work in the business or you work on the business, right?
Yeah.
And then you always have to work in the business, but you need to have a moment where you can take it like a view from above and see like what's working, what's not working, where do I need to put some time and make better decisions. So really cool that you have some people that have helped you with that. How do you with your clients right now in real estate, how do you help them? I'm sure that there's some stuff you see all the time when people come in with either preconceived ideas or mistakes that they do. What is some of the stuff you help them try to get a better view on?
It's really odd because I'm personally not this way typically, but I try to stress patience, like slow down. Like commercial real estate moves very slow as it is.
Yeah.
You don't need to, be foot on the gas all the time. But what I really stress is, you need to know your business from the backside. You need to know the financials. You need to know the implications of certain tax code. You need to know how is staff going to get here. Stop being like, I always say, if you're too busy to meet me for a tour, like you tell me you want to find a site, you're looking for another location. And if it becomes a pattern, I know things happen, right? Like, oh, hey, I know we're supposed to go out Thursday to look at some sites. I can't make it. Got it. But if it keeps happening or you're not responsive to the email stuff, I really have a conversation with them and say, look, don't take this the wrong way, but I don't think you're ready to grow. Because if you can't prioritize your next location because you're worried about paying the fish guy when they're there, or you have to fill in because the bartender wasn't there, you're not ready. And you could be upset with me, but trust me, I'm gonna save you in the long run, as opposed to trying to jump into something you're not ready for.
For sure, and I mean that's a sign, right? If all of these things are happening, you're probably not ready to. You don't have enough staff in your current restaurant. How are you going to hire for the next one? You haven't learned to delegate properly, and you need to be paying the fish guy. Then there's some work to be done on the original place instead of going in there and maybe killing both businesses, right?
I think there's a big difference between a restaurant owner and a restaurant entrepreneur. Like a restaurant owner is chained to their business. They like the old school restaurateur used to carry around the checkbook in their little briefcase because they needed to be in charge. They needed to be holding on to all this stuff. The restaurant entrepreneur has let that go because they see the bigger picture. They're looking 50 yards down the field. They're not looking here. They're looking at what's going on. And those are the people that I want to work with, or I want to get them to that point, because you're likely worrying about things that you could pass off to somebody else.
Yeah. No, you need to be structured. You need to have systems in place. You said it before, right? We're talking about the first chef you worked with. He had some systems where that makes sense, right? I mean, I always talk about cross training. That's what he was doing, right? Everybody working on the different station. But being able to like basically you're trying to build. Let's say it's a house, right? Well, you don't build a house just by putting a couple 2x4s together, right? You need a foundation that's solid. If your original foundation is not solid, it makes no sense to try and build more stuff on top of it because it's going to crumble eventually, right?
Yeah.
So structure what you have now. Make sure that you have the right people in the right places and aces in their places, and that you can then move to something else.
It's often in the cases like I feel like owners and again, maybe it's just me, so I just preach this because I feel like there are people who do it and not realizing that they do it.
Yeah.
But like, you're being reactive.
Yeah.
Like the food guy comes in, wants you to taste something. Hey, there you are. I want you to taste it. Or the waitress comes to get you. You're in the downstairs office. Hey, they're up here with a wine sample they want you to try. You don't have to go try it. You can say, I'm not doing that now. I'm doing this. They want to make an appointment. I'd be happy. That type of, you got to slowly start to take back the control of your stuff. You don't have to be so reactive.
I love that. That's something that I mentioned about 1 million times in my career, but in our industry in general, we're very reactive to everything instead of being proactive. Now, when you're proactive, I'll give you an example. When we talk about managing costs, I always talk about reverse engineering, right? So if you're trying to match a labor, if you know my sales prediction for this week is this, this is how much I want to achieve, right? So let's say I want to do 10% and my dog just went crazy. He's a big puppy.
Oh, this sounds like a big puppy.
50-pound puppy. So he's 5 months old and he sounds like this. So
wow.
probably went to eat somebody. But if you do reverse engineering, going from the budget gives and the percentage you want, then let's say you do 10,000 this week. You want to do 10% in service, right? And in front of house labor, that gives you $1,000 budget. If your average salary is $10, then you got 100 hours to put on the schedule, right? So you ensure that you're going to achieve the proper results. Same thing with your food costs, same thing with your rent. So I love what you're saying is that we're very reactive to our people, coming to the door. Our people, is my staff knowledgeable about the menu and about the training and the managing, like you said before, you need to know your numbers. If you're just reactive to, on the 13th of June, we had a bad, month of May, it's a little late to fix it. But if you're proactive every day and you have your nose in your number and you know your ratios and stuff like that, then it's time, you have enough time to manage and make sure that you're profitable. So
and I got to the point, and I'm sure you've experienced this, is where when you're so in the business and you're looking at the numbers, you can almost look at the numbers and tell what day of week it is. You don't even need to know. You're like, that's a Monday to Tuesday, that's probably a Wednesday, that's a Thursday, that's a Sunday, and that was a really busy Saturday. Yeah. You get so many people, I got to have these guys because it could be really busy this week. Yeah. But the reality is you're in the weeds for what? Hour and a half, 2 hours when you're really in the weeds. Yeah. You got to be able to bite the bullet as opposed to just shell it, because staff doesn't want to be sent home either, right? No. That's an awful feeling.
No, for sure. Or keeping them on the floor and then having a horrible labor and not making money because you had, too many people there. So it's a very good point. You need to be able to manage it and to anticipate what's going on. It's funny. I remember I was working with some clients one day and I looked at their labor. I was showing them their labor numbers in the computer and where to get them and how to count them. And in service the night before, they had about 4% labor, which I was like, this is as bad as being over, right?
Oh, yeah.
I looked at the manager. I said, let me guess. I said, right now, last night, you were running around trying to handle the door. You probably had drinks sitting at the bar that you had to run, and you probably had to help the bartender, help run food. You had a horrible night, and you had a few people that sold for $3,000-4,000. And she's like, yeah, do you know that? I said, if you had 4% labor, this is for sure what happened on the floor, right?
Yeah.
So like you said, when you know your numbers, it'll give you a picture without being there.
Yeah.
Of did we do well? Were we overstaffed, understaffed? Perfectly, the numbers will give you a really good idea. The same way that if you look at an average check that's way below one night with the averages, you know that people were busy because they didn't have time to upsell, and that affected the. So having that information, people feel a lot of times like they're a victim to everything that's happening outside their restaurant, but they're not in control of a lot of stuff that they have. So.
And everything gets so much easier when you realize it's all your fault. You either overstaffed, you understaffed, you didn't order enough, you ordered too much, whatever it is, or you told them what to order, or you didn't provide enough direction so they know how much to order. It's all fixable. If you just want to just say, you know what, this is all on me. I should not have done that. But instead, a lot of restaurant owners do this, and they point out and they say, I need a new manager. This guy's not doing the job, or this girl's not a great bartender. She's stealing from you, or whatever the case is. It's your fault. It's your fault. And I mean that, like, own it, and it becomes so much less of a burden.
I love it. I mean, there's two words here to remember: proactive, right? So proactiveness towards managing your business, and the other one is accountability, and you being accountable to the results. Because, I mean, it's easy to finger point. It's easy to blame others. But when you look in the mirror and you want to find solutions, it makes everything it gives you a better chance of success. Yeah, they might be outside things that affect you, but I've seen it, and you've seen it. So many people blame outside reasons people for their results when they haven't done their homework. The same way that when you say people want to grow, but they're not ready to grow, and they try to go too fast. I'm curious to know that there's obviously some standard ratios in our industry, depending where you look at when you talk about your prime cost, depending on the type of business, whether it's full service or more fast food, but you want to try to hit your 60-65% prime cost, which for those watching us that don't know would be like your cost of goods or your food cost of goods and your labor costs combined, because they're your two biggest budgets. So if you don't control that, you're not going to succeed, because on top of that you'll have the rent, the electricity, the gas, and all that. Now, what are some of the ratios that you look at when it comes to rent? Do you have, like, obviously I know it's general and it changes from concept, from city, from a lot of things. I've always, talked about 5 to 7% Ideally, some people are talking to somebody lately said he's going to add energy to that and try to go below 10. So add, is gas and electricity.
Yeah.
What are those some of the ratios that you want to look at? Or
yeah, I like, whenever I'm doing a formula for my clients, they think it's invasive for me to say, if I never met them before, they want a referral, like, how much do you guys do a year in sales?
Yeah.
And we were about, 1.5 million. You were about 1.5 million, or were you 1.5 million? Because you're 1.28 is not 1.5. So I'm not looking for you to impress me with your number. I'm looking to see what you can afford. So I want you to be 8% or less. 8% is the absolute max. 10%, some guys can get away with 10%, right? But I'd like to see a 6.5, 7.
Yeah,
really.
That's amazing. And you said it before too, right? Is based on what you're doing, not what you think you're going to do.
Yeah,
which I've seen so many times is that, this is a bigger location. I'm doing 1.28 here. I'm going to do 2 over there. Therefore, I can afford 8% with 16K or whatever it would be. No, plan it on what you can do, or your average sales, right? A lot of people are like, but my best month was this. No, don't base it on your best month. Based on, at least when you look at a year, you'll have an average, right? So that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, and if you're not connected in that way, and you're not understanding how big of an issue that your rent plays in your day-to-day decisions, you just think of it as this is my rent here. This is what it is. But again, if you sign that lease, it's your fault, right? Like, you have to have some sort of expectation of what you're paying and understanding. And there's a lot that goes into that. Like, what are your options? Like, what you have a 10-year lease, but you have 2 option periods. What does there could be? Do you know your lease enough to know you could say, okay, I'm paying below market rent now, but you could be jumping up to a market rent. You're paying a rent that's 10 years old, essentially, with some minor increases the whole way. But now you got to jump up to a market rent in year 11. You got to know your stuff. You got to know where you're at.
Yeah, because it can hit you pretty hard, I'm guessing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So very interesting. Know what your capacity of paying is, and that works. Like, we're talking with people in your case that want to grow to other locations, but if you want to open a restaurant, know that there's ratios and ways for you to calculate how many people are going to come in and potentially what your revenue is going to be, and base that on averages, and then go to that, like you said, ideally that 6.5, 7%. This is your capacity. I remember being I was so happy to be in that office, but with somebody who was actually doing really well right now. He's got 6 restaurants open, but he was working on number 2 when I worked with him, and he came to me and he was at 13%. From what the average sales he thought he was going to get. And I said, do not, and he was like, the contract's ready. I'm like, do not sign that, please. And then we sat down and we crunched numbers, and he went back and he renegotiated with them. And eventually I think he actually didn't even sign that lease because they wouldn't go down below what would be about 11 for him. So I said, if you're not, give yourself some leeway. You don't know. It's your second one. Obviously by 5, 6, there's maybe more money in the company for you to have some leeway for do that. But if it's number 2 and you're not setting yourself up to win, it's going to be hard, right?
2 things that I always say: your second restaurant is your first restaurant. Yeah. And adding a third restaurant is like having a third kid, only 10 times harder. It's not because now you've gone from 1 to 2. So now you can't split yourself in half. So right now you got to rely on one person. But now when you open up the third one, now there's going to be one that's never going to get nearly as much attention. So you have to either let go, and you have to, make sure you do the right decision. But there's so much in that, a lot of people don't want to raise prices. They're afraid to raise prices, but you got to look at it all. It's all numbers. It's a numbers game. It's
a ratio game, and you need to make sure that you're there for sure. What's a common myth in general about our industry that you'd like to debunk, or that you think makes no sense?
A myth I like to debunk. I think it's shifted. And we alluded to it before, but. There are people with real passion in those kitchens and in that house, and front of the house too, right? Like, they like to provide service. You certainly see it at, the higher end places where there are people, getting paid more money, and they provide that service, or they're providing a certain level of cuisine. It's not an industry of castaways. It's an industry of people who have a passion for food and sometimes tattoos and Jameson. That's just what it is. And it's okay. And I think, they really care. There's a lot of things like, oh, they don't care what's going on back there. They, dude, there's more care than what you think. And there's a lot of people who are busting their ass to make sure you have a good experience front of the house too. They just make it look like they're not doing it. So that's a real skill, and it should not be looked down upon anymore.
I love that. I've spent some years in the kitchen, but most of my life in service. So totally,
Yeah.
it's an art to make it look seamless and to get to be knowledgeable, to build rapport with any type of personality, with any type of. One table gives you crap, and then the next table you're smiling and you're happy, and yeah, it's
and you know what? Even if you're not going to be there forever, that's why I told my daughter you're going to work in a restaurant in some capacity, because you're going to have to deal with stuff like that over here. But you got to be smiling over here. You got 10 things going on in your brain. You're selling over here. You're appeasing somebody over here. You're, counseling a friend in the back. You learn so many different interpersonal skills that you're not going to learn that sitting at a desk anywhere.
You can tell when somebody's worked in the restaurant industry. I find there is that grit on one side because of the ability to deal with all that and empathy from working with all kinds of people. So I think that's a really good point. I'm curious. You do a podcast. You ask people a lot of questions. We've been chatting together for over 50 minutes. Is there one question that if you were sitting in my place, you would ask Kyle Inserra? Or one question you would love to answer, could be anything, or that you would ask yourself?
What question I would ask myself? That is a good question. I made a lot of decisions based on, I don't even know what it was based on. Faith in somebody, partnership wise. A lot of my questions would be whys. Why did you partner with somebody if you felt a certain way? Like, I learned in that process, like we were talking kind of before we came on air, or maybe it was when we were on air, I don't remember. But like, I learned so much, like, by doing. I only learned by doing. You could tell me 1,000 times the stove is hot. I'm going to be, okay, yeah, you're right. It's hot. And I had to do that so many times. But I would say, why did you choose? I went down the path of bad partnership, bad partners, nice guys, bad partners. And then I did it again. Because I was so blinded by the, like, that's not going to happen again.
Yeah.
Right? Not gonna happen.
What are the odds?
Yeah. And the odds are 100% apparently. So
yeah.
That would be my question. And it's funny because I was going through with another guy who I would consider a quasi mentor, and I was asking him some questions, and he was like, why do you keep getting stuck with these partners? I'm like, you know what? You're right. It's me. I made awful decisions. It's just terrible. I was so in love with the concept idea or whatever, the romanticism of the industry. I ignored the flashing red signs and the flags and the fireworks.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what we've been saying too, right? It's easy to fall in love with the idea. And I tell people all the time, whether it's restaurant concepts or business ideas, it's easy we could sit together and come up with a bunch of business ideas today. But execution is hard. Executing it, making sure that sometimes we're blinded by our desire for it to work and to make sense. But like you said, like with a bit of perspective, you might have made some different decisions.
What a big thing is, something I learned relatively recently is, like, if you have a big decision like that, is to just kind of say, like, all right, that sounds great, but you know what? Let me just kind of sit on it for tonight.
Yeah.
And even if you're zen in the moment, great. But even more so if you're like anxious or excited or angry that something's ending and you have to make a decision, give it some pause, because likely you're not going to feel the same way in 24 hours.
Yeah, it's like sleeping on it is always a good a good anything, right? Something you want to buy, a project, something like that. Give yourself a little bit of time to let it sink in and to reflect on it. It's true that sometimes after the morning after, your perspective or your view of something is quite different.
For sure.
This has been a really cool conversation to kind of wrap this up.
Yeah.
I'd love to throw a bunch of rapid fire questions at you, just to get to know you a little bit more. We played this or that at the beginning, but I'm curious. Do you like to have a drink?
Yeah.
Occasionally have a drink.
Yes.
Are Are you more a wine beer or a spirits guy?
Spirits.
Spirits. What's your favorite?
My favorite spirit in particular?
Yeah.
Right
Or
now,
category, anyways.
Tequila.
Tequila. Oh, I love tequila, and it's rare that people say that, but I find it's such a undervalued spirit. But
there's terroir to tequila. You know, it's only, people don't realize that it only comes from the tequila section of Mexico.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've and it doesn't make me feel that bad. And I'm 44 now. I gotta care about those things.
Funny, we're the same age. When you said you were talking about school before, I'm like, we're probably close to being the same age, me and Cal. Do you have a go-to tequila? What's your
it's not a super fancy one. It's Espolón. Espolón Reposado is one. You know, the Clase Azules and all these other ones are great, but there's a lot of marketing behind them. I like, just like anything else, I like what I like. It doesn't have to be the brand of anything.
There's a lot of marketing behind spirits in general, right? If you go in the vodka world and all that, it's all about branding and marketing. I was in New York a while back because it was my 30th birthday, so it seems like it was yesterday. But and I was reading something that they had done a blind taste with some industry people, some bartenders, mixologists, and all that of vodkas, and Smirnoff won. Yeah. Over Grey Goose, over Belvedere, over all of the famous super highly branded ones. So I thought that was pretty funny especially with vodka that doesn't have a super
Yeah, you don't think vodka has a taste until you taste a bunch of the most interesting spirits taste I've ever been to was a vodka one.
That's really cool. But I love tequila. Glad to hear that. When I started dating my girlfriend 10 years ago, I say girlfriend, we're not married, but we have 2 kids, a house, a dog. I'll probably say my wife, but
you're just missing the ring. Yeah,
she didn't put a ring on it, let's just say. But she was having a tequila tonic, right? Love gin tonics and stuff like that. I was like, tequila tonic, until I tasted it. I'm like, man, if you want to taste tequila, you can drink it straight, but but it's a fun way to try that.
I've actually never had that.
Try it out. I don't know if you're a tonic guy. I love gin tonics, my G&Ts, but try it with tequila. It's a really cool thing. We talk about, dining room, delivery, stuff like that. The Uber Eats, DoorDash of the world, the delivery apps, are they, you think, for our industry, a big no or a necessary evil?
They're a huge no. Look, I say that, and I understand that a lot of people have, they have to go to them. It's a necessity to a certain extent, but what they're doing on the back end to our industry was a whole separate podcast, which is they're taking all the information. Forget about the fees. They're taking all the information,
the data.
Yeah, and you can't market directly to your guests. And they're opening up ghost kitchens based on the data that they collect. There's a lot I could get into. I'm actually on a panel that speaks to the Federal Trade Commission fairly regularly about their practices.
Yep.
They're deceptive. It's not a good thing. You could do it on your own.
Yeah, for sure. Or find ways to, I saw somebody that was using all the third-party apps, but was putting their menus and their stuff in the bags so that they could try to regain their own customers.
That's what I did.
And what you're saying is true. If the first time you hear that, the first time I heard that a few months ago, I was like, kind of fell on my butt, but also realized it makes sense. Amazon does that all the time, right? Amazon is an item that does really well. They go and produce it, put theirs ahead of the others that we're selling through them. And this new tripod, we're throwing the tripod on there. This guy's doing $1 million a year. They have all the data on the sales, and then they use that. Well, that's what a lot of the third party are doing now. They see the data. They see which one of your items sell in which area, so they know where to put their ghost kitchen to cover the best area. So they're using your data to basically undercut you. And and
look at that. Look at the agreement. Look at your Grubhub agreement and see where it says phone-in orders. And you're like, what the hell are phone-in orders? That's where they get you. They're getting, people are calling a number that they think is the restaurant, but it's really Grubhub. Grubhub's calling in it's like this whole...
And they take a cut of somebody just trying to call you directly.
Yeah.
There will be, I think, a lot of changes in that industry in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years for sure. Because it's not, they're not even profitable for the most part, right? They're subsidizing the purchase, the guest at the end. So
they can take the data and sell the data, do whatever they're going to do with it. We transitioned in the middle of the pandemic from being on those platforms to offering native delivery. Yeah. So it's just a matter of driving your own traffic to your ordering links. That's it.
And there's some great companies out there doing the native stuff, right?
Yeah.
The Olos, the Lunchbox, the Bbots, I'm forgetting a bunch, but the best trip you've ever taken?
Oh, Spain.
Spain, beautiful.
I love Spain. It's my wife and I went there a couple years ago, and it's like if you're a foodie or restaurant guy, that's what they do for fun. They eat and they drink and they hang out for fun. And that's I love the culture. I love the food. It's just a great place.
I've been to Barcelona with my lady, and wow, what an experience that was.
Yeah.
Your favorite restaurant to go to?
I like the experiential restaurants, but I really like, I kind of crave the ones that are familiar.
Yeah.
More so. So I'm down to try the new one, but I want to give it a little bit of time. There are two that are probably neck and neck for me, and they're not names that are going to blow people's, minds, but Balthazar here in the city, classic French bistro, but done like even their outdoor dining when they set it up was like
It was amazing.
And it's good quality food, good quality service, but not pretentious. Not it's French fries and steak and mussels and Boqueria. It's a Spanish restaurant, tapas restaurant here in the city. I literally, when we left to go to Spain, I was like, man, I hope the food is as good as it is at Boqueria. So, and it was, so that's good.
Yeah, that's one thing I discovered too. I expected when we did Spain, we did France and Spain, and I was expecting to eat some of the best croissants in France, and I realized there's some amazing bakers in Montreal. A lot of them are French, anyways, that moved here. But I'm like, I've had better croissants in Montreal than in some places in France. So
I'm dying to go back up there. With Eric, we were just talking about it to Montreal. I was up there one time for a bachelor party, so I didn't get the full culinary experience, but. I'm looking to head up there and see what that's all about. Get that
definitely worth the trip.
Yeah.
What are 3 words that would describe you?
Oh man, I am pretty easygoing. Like I don't let too many things, rock the boat. I think you learn that from the restaurant business. I'm focused on what I want to. I get a laser on what I want to do, and I stay with it.
Yeah.
But I'm also a little bit of a scatterbrain because I have so many, especially now, right? Like all these different things coming out of the restaurant industry. It's like absorb them, and then that entrepreneurial kitchen guy spirit comes out, that creative, and you want to like, what if we did this and what if we did that? And people like my friends and just people in the industry are just kind of like look at me like, okay, like are you going to do this one or you're not just going to keep talking about it? So it's a little bit of everything.
A running joke within our company and every training I've given in the last 10 years working in a restaurant, but I always say we sometimes lack a little bit of focus in our a cat, right? Mm-hmm. So like it'll take us anywhere. I run that joke, and it feels like everybody that I love in our industry has that same lack of attention. So
it's the creative part of you. You just gotta think. Honestly, that's my excuse anyway. Very
cool. If you stranded on a desert island and you can bring one album of music, what would it be?
Babylon by Bus by Bob Marley.
Very cool. Very groovy. If you're on an island with that, you already said you like the beach at the beginning. It all ties in together.
Yeah.
If you could have dinner with anyone, who would that be?
Oh man, my mom. She passed away when I was 18. So yeah, for sure.
I can imagine how that would be special. Yeah. And that would mean a lot. I think it's going to be hard to top that. I had a few more questions, but on a memory of her, and hopefully one night as you're dreaming, you're having dinner at Balthazar with her.
Sure. That'd be great.
Kyle, it was a pleasure, a joy to chat with you.
Thank you for having me.
Now I had it written in front of me and I flipped it to see my notes, but it's the National Restaurant Owners Podcast. I should have remembered that. If people need your help, if people want to grow their brand, they want to work with you, what's the best way to connect, get in touch with you?
Instagram. It's just at Kyle Inserra is the best way. If you're in the States, you can also text me, 914-996-4569. It's another great way.
That's amazing. So if you want to expand your brand, go. I think Kyle can definitely help you. And thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you for the time. I appreciate it, man. Very grateful.
And everybody else, we'll see you soon. Cheers.